Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The WBA's tried to look like it's cleaning up its act, removing interim titles recently across its divisions, but it can only go so far. The shenanigans continue, and case in point, its latest heavyweight rankings, which it updated and then re-updated. We've got some wild and weird movements, and we're going to get to that. And as well, because of the interim title being removed, which was Daniel Dubois' previous WBA world title, as it were, you have him at number one in the rankings, but some other movement too, and it's worth talking about. So you've got the situation of a potential box off. You've got Hughie Fury just randomly coming into the rankings here, and you've got Mark Demori, another sort of head scratcher, a WTF moment. He is climbing in the rankings despite not having fought. And then you've got some other guys that have been binned off completely. So we'll step through all this stuff because it's worth talking about, and there's clearly some moves coming and some fights likely to be made at some point that we've been talking about, but yeah, we'll get into it. So first off, so they put up a statement you can see here on screen. Due to an administrative error, an earlier draft of the updated rankings for August 2021 were briefly published on the WBA website last night. The mistake has now been rectified with the publication of the fully updated August rankings. So they're being a little bit disingenuous because when they say briefly, I mean, I came to the WBA website at least a day after the rankings were put up, and it's on the right hand side of the screen here, and this was the update. So I took my screenshot and I thought, yeah, I'll get to my video soon. So lucky I didn't sort of get to it immediately, because I would have missed another update where, as you can see, when you compare side to side, you've got Hughie Fury just out of nowhere coming in at number 5, and we'll talk about that. But above that, you've got a situation where Michael Hunter's been climbing. You've got Robert Helenius coming back into the top 15. So he was the gold champion, which was above the rankings, but that whole sort of situation where they announced removing interim title, so Daniel Dubois loses that. And that OC thing next to his name means official challenger or official vacant challenger. There is actually a key at the bottom of here, official challenger vacant. So that obviously means he's got a claim to having a shot as a result of this resolution they made about removing interim titles. But it's a whole mess and it's a whole cluster. So bear with me here. We'll step through each of the things one by one. But what I should do is I'll go through a couple of things from last month's rankings and against this month's updated rankings, as it were. So I'll bring the other one up here. So this was from the 31st of July. So you can see from left, which is the current, to right, which was a month ago or a month and a few days ago, quite a bit of movement. So Charles Martin, who had been at number 5 in the rankings, binned off completely. Gomberger, he has just dropped from the top 15 completely. And that's curious in itself. Generally, some of these guys go down and out, not just out, especially if you're in the top 5. So whatever's happened there, maybe PBC has decided they're not going to sort of stump up any more cash to keep them ranked there. They're going elsewhere. I don't know. But you've also got number 9 here, Gerald Washington, binned off completely as well. So that's interesting. But Jonathan Rice, he had gone into the WBA rankings as a result of beating Michael Polite Coffey. That was the first month he'd been ranked, the end of July there in the WBA rankings. He is binned off completely as well. So what they've done, and I guess I can sort of close this one down now, just bear with me here. So on the right here is the 31st of August, and then on the left is the updated from the 1st of September. And even from when with this, you can see there's a change. Mark Demori actually was as high as number 7 on the 31st of August, but still he's climbing. I guess we'll address that first before we get to the box off stuff a little bit later on. Mark Demori has not been fighting. The guy hasn't earned his place in the rankings. It's another WTF moment. How can this guy be climbing in the rankings? Obviously, it's a pay-for-play sort of situation. that promoters are cozying up and someone is making sure that he's climbing, so then he's the next target and being fed to someone higher up in the rankings. And who would that be? Well, I guess the question is, would it be Michael Hunter? Michael Hunter has been saying that he's going to be fighting again soon, bringing in Mark Demori, and then making him climb in the rankings. They'll say, oh, this guy's a good fighter, because he does have, on paper, a solid record, but the guy's been pretty inactive and doesn't deserve to be in here. And if it is Michael Hunter's next opponent, you got to question the matchmaking, because it's pretty soft matchmaking for a guy regarded in the top 10. But regardless of whoever Demori is going to be facing, say if it was a Luis Ortiz, for example, or something like that, it's just basically a rubbish fight, a rubbish opponent, and he's being brought into these rankings in a sort of way that's so corrupt, he doesn't deserve to be there, no matter what anyone says. It's ridiculous. So, getting to the sort of top end of the rankings here. So, we knew that there was going to be a little bit of change because Robert Helenius was going to have to come back into the rankings because of what the WBA had put in its resolution regarding the gold title and obviously the removing of the interim title. So, Dubois, who was the interim title holder, is the OC, which is the, what was the official vacant challenger or whatever. So most likely there's two options that are going to happen next. There's either going to be a box off, which would be 4 boxes, or it'll be Daniel Dubois versus Trevor Bryan. So basically the WBA said one of the two things would happen. The former holder of the interim title would face the world champion. In this case, that is Trevor Bryan. So Anthony Joshua, as we know, is the true champion within the WBA. But for the purpose of the way that the WBA describes it, they're saying it would be Daniel Dubois versus the world champion, if that fight is ordered. Or there could be a 4-way box off, which in any case probably would be Daniel Dubois facing Trevor Bryan, in line with the other part of what was in their press release. But I think a lot of us had just considered the other two names for a box off would be the gold champion and potentially Mahmoud Shah, the champion in recess. But maybe because they've put Shah into recess despite him having fought Christopher Lovejoy earlier this year, maybe they're just going to bin him off out of a potential box off, and Michael Hunter is in the frame. Because certainly based on his rising from, what was it, I think from a month ago, he was number 6. Now to number 2 off the back of that win against Mike Wilson, because he was actually, that was actually a WBA eliminator. It wasn't specified at the time for which belt or what it was actually leading to, but it was an eliminator of some sort. So maybe this is going to get him into a box off or something like that, into that scenario. And maybe this is what Trilla's been trying to engineer for Michael Hunter, that they can potentially have him fight one of these guys in a box office, bring that to Trilla. But more likely that's going to be a number of months off. But Hunter has indicated he's returning soon. So if that's going to be someone in the WBA, possibly Mark Demori, you'd have to go, okay, is this actually going to be likely? Or it would be someone else further down. But based on sort of what you're sort of seeing there, a lot of guys are either tied up or promotional issues probably preclude a fight getting made with Michael Hunter. Because let's face it, I mean, and people don't seem to acknowledge this, the promotional ties matter. You're not just going to be bringing some guy over who's got a TV deal and their promoter is tied to a network. It's not going to happen. It doesn't work like that. So when Michael Hunter's calling out someone like a Dillian White, for example, it's ridiculous because they would have to actually way overpay just to get White there. But why would White, who works with Eddie Hearn, who's working on DAZN, ever consider going to Trilla an opponent? I mean, it's a different scenario. You sort of feed a guy like Zhang Jilei. They made an agreement for him to fight on Trilla, but he was going to be the A-side in some sort of tune-up. That's, you know, no risk to what Eddie Hearn is doing, and sort of, he's not going to send one of his cash cows over the other side of the street. I don't know why it seems to be such a problem for people to understand. The promotional matters matter. But in terms of a potential box off, Dubois, Bryan, and maybe Hunter and whoever's got the gold title, because remember, Helenius here at number 3, he's due to be fighting Adam Kovnatsky on the 9th of October. Good fight. So maybe the winner of that will be ordered in a box off with the likes of Hunter, Dubois, gold title holder, and Trevor Bryan. Could be something like that. It sort of looks like Mahmoud Shah might be the guy left without a chair. But I would note on Robert Helenius, sort of interesting that he's only as low as number 3, because in the pecking order beforehand, before they made this decision to remove an interim title, Daniel Dubois was lower on the totem pole than Robert Helenius. Helenius, as their gold champion, was rated above the rankings, which meant there was a pecking order, and Helenius was above Dubois, but no longer, which is strange because the WBA is trying to put so much stock into this gold title. Doesn't really seem like they're following through with, they're trying to make this more prestigious, sort of their main sort of minor title, as it were, sort of akin to the WBC silver title, but then they put him at number 3. I was thinking, well, he may actually be at number 1, or at least number 2. It would be one of those two, not number 3. So Michael Hunter is in a prime position for something, at least. And Robert Helenius, the gold title, obviously we know he's got a fight coming up. But number 5 there. So obviously this is part of the reason that these rankings were reissued, as we can sort of see from the website. Actually, I'll close down this other one just quickly. So, yeah, obviously confusing having a re-updated and you're having all sorts of fighters binned off and changes. But Hughie Fury coming in here. As we know, he's going to be fighting Christian Hammer 16th of October. So clearly with that being announced, and that was announced after these rankings, so that was obviously a forerunner to something was happening with Hughie Fury. This is why he's now, out of nowhere, coming into number 5 spot in the WBA rankings. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but obviously his new promoter, Boxer, along with Sky, well, it's probably his promoters, put up some money to get him in here. They're getting a sanctioned fight, and probably going to be some sort of eliminator in the WBA. So expect that to be announced, because if he goes in at number 5, they're obviously trying to push him higher up and into something. Maybe Hughie Fury's an outside chance for some sort of box off if one is eventually ordered. And maybe Boxer and Sky, if he sort of enters that fray, could potentially overpay to get opponents onto the Sky platform. I can see it happening. So you have different movement here. Luis Ortiz, Andy Ruiz Jr. sliding down a few positions this month, and obviously Charles Martin binned off altogether. And with that happening as well, it does beg the question, and I talked about this in a recent Patreon video, Charles Martin seems to be a bit of an odd man out at PBC at the moment. They don't seem to really be prioritizing his career or getting him sort of any interesting fight. I mean, he's barely been in the discussion for any fights in the past year or so since he beat Gerald Washington. There was a little bit of talk about him fighting Andy Ruiz Jr. There was some talks, but obviously Ruiz got injured or was already injured, had surgery. It's kind of sort of petered away, and now Martin's out of the rankings altogether. And this is a little bit longer, this video, I guess, than my typical updates of rank movement and shenanigans, but there's a lot more going on here. And clearly at number 8 here, which is just an absolute disgrace, Mark Demori. How he could ever be here, it's disgraceful, but clearly he's going to get fed to someone. My pick would be either Michael Hunter, as I say, as a continued tune-up for him. Michael Hunter's on some multi-fight deal at Triller. They got him Mike Wilson to begin with, the white delight, as it were. It's probably going to be a similar level of opponent, a slight step up, I guess Demori is, but it's not a fight people want or would need to see, and neither is it if it ends up being for Luis Ortiz, for example. Ortiz had a tune-up against Alexander Flores the end of 2020, hasn't been cited since. No real sort of noise about what's happening for him. Andy Ruiz Jr. seems to be shying away from that potential fight that he said he was interested and would sort of consider and want to have after an Areola fight, but that's all gone quiet. So Ortiz and Demori, potentially. But sort of looking further down the rankings here, obviously, a lot of these guys have just fought. You've got Zan Kosobutsky, Aslanbek Makhmadov, but Linnea Pero, he is coming back soon. Martin Bakoli's got a fight coming up in a week or so after these this video. And then you have Adam Kovnatsky and Frank Sanchez. They're going to be on that Wilder Fury 3 undercard. Anyway, a lot of movement, potential options for a box-off coming. Can see that happening. Hughie Fury out of nowhere, number 5. And then you have Mark Demori continuing his climb. 10th or 11th or whatever it was last month, now number 8. No fight, no action, no form. Fed to someone soon, no doubt. Charles Martin binned off altogether. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.